Narrated by Amelia. The plane landed just after midnight. The wheels hit the runway with a heavy thud that rattled through my bones, like a warning I couldn't ignore. As the cabin lights flickered on, everyone around me stirred, stretching, checking phones, calling loved ones. I stayed frozen in my seat, hands clenched around the armrests, staring straight ahead. I had promised myself I would never come back. Not to this city, not to that house, and definitely not to the man who lived inside it. But promises are easy to make when you're far away. They get harder to keep when a trembling voice on the phone says your name like it's the only thing keeping her upright. Amelia, my mother had whispered. If you can, please come home. So here I was. Dragging my suitcase through the airport felt like walking through a tunnel I couldn't turn back from. The fluorescent lights were too bright. The air smelled like disinfectant and exhaustion. Every announcement echoed too loudly in my head. I kept telling myself, you're not a child anymore. You're stronger now. You're only staying a few days. Outside, the cold hit me hard. I wrapped my coat tighter around myself and declined the rideshare app I'd already opened 3 times. Instead, I flagged down an old taxi with cracked leather seats and the faint smell of diesel. Where to? The driver asked. I gave him the address. The moment it left my mouth, my throat tightened. The city hadn't changed much. The same closed movie theater. The same bakery with the flickering sign. The same streetlights that always felt a little too dim, like they were hiding something. But I had changed. I had learned how to survive on my own. How to pay rent. How to smile without permission. How to build a life far away from fear. The taxi slowed, then stopped. We're here, the driver said. I stepped out and stared at the house. The paint was peeling. The gate still squeaked when the wind moved it. The porch light was on, too bright against the darkness, like an eye that never slept. I stood there longer than necessary before ringing the bell. The door opened. My mother stood there, smaller than I remembered. Her hair had gone almost completely grey, and deep lines framed her eyes. For a second, she just stared at me, as if she needed proof I was real. Amelia, she said. She pulled me into a hug that felt fragile, like she might break if I held her too tightly. Her arms were thin, her shoulders weak. I smelled the familiar scent of laundry soap and something underneath it. Fatigue. You came, she whispered. I'm here, I said. Then I felt it. That shift in the air. A presence behind her. I didn't need to look to know who it was. But I did anyway. My stepfather stood in the doorway, taller than both of us, filling the space like he owned it. His expression was calm, almost amused. The same look he'd always worn, one that never reached his eyes. Well, he said. Look who's back. My body went rigid. Welcome back, Amelia. The words sounded polite. Friendly, even. But my chest tightened like it always had. He stepped forward and grabbed my suitcase before I could stop him. Long trip, he added. You must be exhausted. I nodded, because it was easier than speaking. Inside, the house smelled exactly the same, old furniture, cleaning spray, and something else I could never quite name. The living room hadn't changed. The couch. The family photos. Every picture carefully arranged, so I was always on the edge of the frame. My mother tried to fill the silence. I cleaned your room, she said softly. It's been closed for years. My room. The place where I used to lie awake at night counting breaths, waiting for morning. We climbed the stairs. Each step felt heavier than the last, like the house itself was pulling me backward. The door to my room was open. The bed was neatly made. New curtains hung by the window. It's good to have you home, my mother said. Home. She left the room, closing the door behind her. I set my bag down and exhaled shakily. My hands were trembling. I walked toward the door, reached for the handle. Locked. The sound hit me like ice water. Mom. I called out. No answer. Then I heard a voice behind me. Relax. I turned. He was standing inside the room. I don't remember hearing the door open. I don't remember how he got there. My mind blurred, focusing only on the fact that he was too close. We just need to talk, he said. I want to leave, I replied, forcing my voice to stay steady. He smiled faintly. You always were dramatic. He took a step toward me. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. Please, I said. Stay back. He laughed quietly, like I'd told a joke. The room felt smaller. The walls closer. My past pressed in on me all at once, every moment I'd tried to forget, every night I'd spent pretending I was invisible. And then, the door flew open. Stop! My mother's voice cut through the room. She stood there, breathing hard, her face pale. For the first time, I saw anger in her eyes. What are you doing? She demanded. He stepped back immediately, straightening his shirt, his expression shifting like a switch had been flipped. I was welcoming her home, he said calmly. I slid down onto the edge of the bed, my hands shaking uncontrollably. My mother looked at me. I could see the conflict on her face, fear, guilt, and something else I didn't want to name. Amelia, she said quietly. You're tired. Try to rest. Rest. That word felt cruel. They left the room. This time the door didn't lock, but it didn't matter. I stayed exactly where I was, staring at the wall as tears slid silently down my face. I pulled out my phone. No signal. I typed a message. Deleted it. Typed another. Deleted that too. What would I even say? I shouldn't have come back. I made a mistake. I'm not safe. I lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling. The same ceiling I'd stared at years ago while making promises to myself. I understood something then, with painful clarity. Coming home hadn't brought closure. It had reopened a door I thought was sealed forever. And if I wanted to survive this time, I couldn't stay silent. Not anymore. Narrated by Amelia. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling, counting the tiny cracks that hadn't been there before. Or maybe they had, and I'd just forgotten. The house made noises I remembered too well. The low groan of pipes, the soft tick of cooling wood, the wind brushing against the siding like fingers testing a locked door. Every sound made my muscles tighten. I kept expecting footsteps, kept listening for the creak outside my room. But nothing came. That almost scared me more. Sometime before dawn, I gave up on sleep and sat up. My phone buzzed weakly, one bar of signal flickering on and off. I moved toward the window, lifting the curtain just enough to see outside. The street looked harmless in the pale morning light. A dog walker passed by. A car drove slowly down the road. Normal life continued, completely unaware of what lived inside this house. I wondered how many people had walked past this place over the years, never knowing what happened behind these walls. I showered quietly, flinching every time the water pipes rattled. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back. My eyes were rimmed red. My face looked older somehow, tighter, sharper. You're not a kid anymore, I reminded myself. You're not trapped. I dressed carefully, choosing jeans and a sweater that made me feel solid, grounded. Armor disguised as clothing. Downstairs, the kitchen was already awake. My mother stood at the counter, stirring something on the stove. She looked up when she heard me and smiled too quickly. Good morning, she said. Morning. We stood there in silence, the kind that presses down on your chest. She slid a plate toward me. Eggs. Toast. Coffee. You didn't eat much yesterday. I wasn't hungry. She hesitated, then asked, Did you sleep okay? I thought of the locked door, of his voice, of the way my body had frozen. I slept, I said. It wasn't a lie, just not the truth. He walked in then. My stepfather moved like he owned every inch of the room, freshly shaved, calm, in control. He poured himself coffee, nodded at me like we were old friends. Morning, Amelia, he said. Hope you're settling in. I felt my jaw tighten. I'll only be here a few days, I replied. He raised an eyebrow. We'll see. My mother didn't look up. After breakfast, I offered to help with chores, anything to avoid being alone. She showed me where things were, talking too much, her words tumbling over each other like she was trying to fill every silence before it turned dangerous. At one point, I reached for a glass on the top shelf. My hand shook slightly. She noticed. Her eyes softened. "Amelia." I froze. She lowered her voice. Not always like this." I turned to face her. "You've been saying that since I was 12, I said quietly. Her lips trembled. "I stayed because I thought it was better," she whispered. "For you. For us." The words settled heavy in my chest. Better. I wanted to scream. Instead, I nodded. Later that afternoon, I stepped outside for air. The backyard was overgrown, weeds pushing through cracked concrete. I remembered playing here as a kid, pretending the yard was somewhere else, anywhere else. I sat on the old wooden steps and checked my phone again. One bar. I opened my contacts and stopped at a name I hadn't touched in years. Lena. My best friend from high school. The only person who had known everything. The one who'd helped me leave. I hesitated, then typed. "I'm back in town. I need to talk." The message sent. Almost immediately, 3 dots appeared. "Are you okay?" My chest tightened. "Not really." A pause. "Where are you?" I didn't answer that. Not yet. That evening, my stepfather called me into the living room. "We should clear the air," he said. Family meeting. My mother sat on the couch, hands folded tightly in her lap. He stood in front of us, arms crossed. "You left without saying goodbye years ago," he began. "Caused a lot of pain." I stared at him. "I left because I wasn't safe," I said. He laughed softly. "Everyone feels unsafe sometimes." I felt my mother shift beside me. He continued. "You're an adult now. If you're going to stay under my roof, there need to be rules." Rules. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. "I'm not staying," I said. "Oh," he replied. "And where will you go?" I didn't answer. That night, I locked my door and pushed a chair against it. I lay awake again, but this time I wasn't just afraid. I was thinking, planning, remembering every survival skill I'd learned since leaving. I opened my laptop and searched for nearby hotels, shelters, anything. My bank account was stable, but not endless. I needed a plan, not just an escape. My phone buzzed. A message from Lena. "I can meet you tomorrow. Don't come alone." I exhaled shakily. The next morning, my stepfather announced he was running errands. The moment his car pulled out of the driveway, my body relaxed just enough to breathe. "I'm going out," I told my mother. "Where?" "I need space." She nodded. Too quickly again. "I'll be back later," I added. I met Lena at a small cafe across town. The moment she saw me, she stood up and pulled me into a fierce hug. "Oh my God," she said. I knew it was bad, but, "Amelia." We sat across from each other, coffee untouched as I told her everything. The flight, the door, the look in his eyes. Her hands curled into fists. "You can't stay there," she said firmly. "I know. You can stay with me," she offered without hesitation. "As long as you need." Relief washed over me so suddenly I nearly cried. "But there's more," I admitted. "He's careful. He knows how to stay just on the right side of believable." She nodded. "Then you need proof." That word echoed in my mind. Proof. I returned to the house that evening with a plan forming. Slow, careful, dangerous. I wasn't just going to leave. I was going to make sure I never had to come back. Because this time, I wasn't running. I was preparing. Narrated by Amelia. There's a moment when fear changes shape. It doesn't disappear, but it sharpens. It stops being loud and starts being precise. That's what happened to me the morning after I met Lena. I woke up knowing one thing with absolute clarity. If I stayed silent, this house would swallow me again. So I stopped being silent, at least in the ways that mattered. I woke early, before the sun. The house was still, wrapped in that fragile quiet that only exists when someone dangerous is asleep somewhere nearby. I dressed carefully, choosing soft clothes that wouldn't rustle. My phone stayed on silent. Every movement was measured. I wasn't just living here anymore. I was observing. Downstairs, I moved through the kitchen, noticing details I'd ignored before. The cabinet where he kept documents. The drawer he always locked. The hallway mirror positioned so he could see anyone coming down the stairs. Control had a layout. I made coffee and sat at the table, pretending to scroll through my phone when he walked in. "Up early," he said casually. "So are you," I replied. He smiled. "Old habits." We ate in silence. My mother joined us a few minutes later, eyes tired, movement small. She avoided looking at either of us for too long. When he left for work, the air changed instantly, lighter, but still tense, like a held breath that didn't dare fully release. That's when I started. I opened my phone and turned on the voice recorder, sliding it into my pocket. I didn't know yet what I was recording for, just that I needed something. Anything. My mother noticed my hands shaking as I washed dishes. "You don't have to do that," she said. "I want to," I replied. She hesitated, then quietly said, "He's been careful since you arrived." That word again. Careful. Careful about what? I asked. She shook her head. "Nothing. I shouldn't have said anything." I dried my hands slowly. "Mom," I said gently, "has he ever hurt you?" Her breath caught. She didn't answer. That was answer enough. Later that day, I went upstairs and opened my old closet. A box sat in the back, dusty and taped shut. I recognized it instantly. Things I hadn't been allowed to take when I left. My stomach twisted as I opened it. Inside were notebooks, old phones, a cracked digital camera I barely remembered owning, and at the bottom, a folded piece of paper. I opened it carefully. It was a list. Dates, times, short descriptions written in my teenage handwriting. Yelled for hours. Broke the door. Mom cried after. I sank onto the floor, paper shaking in my hands. I had been documenting back then, too. I just didn't realize it. That night, he came home late. I was in the living room, pretending to read. He stopped in the doorway. "You going somewhere tomorrow?" he asked. "Why?" "You've been leaving a lot." I met his gaze. "I'm allowed to leave." He stared at me for a long moment, then nodded. "Of course," he said. "I just like to know what's happening in my house." My phone recorder was running. I felt my heart pounding against my ribs, but I kept my face neutral. "I'm an adult," I replied. A flicker crossed his expression, annoyance, maybe, or something darker. "Adults make mistakes," he said quietly. "I wouldn't want you to regret anything." That night, I emailed the audio file to myself and to Lena, just in case. The next day, Lena met me outside again. We walked through a park, sitting far apart from anyone else. "This isn't enough yet," she said after listening to the recording. "But it's a start." "What do I do?" I asked. She thought for a moment. "You let him talk," she said. "People like him always do." Back at the house, I began to ask questions. Innocent ones. Curious ones. Why do you keep those files locked? Why did the neighbors stop talking to us? Why did Dad's brother never visit again? Each question landed like a stone dropped into still water. He didn't explode. He didn't need to. Instead, he corrected me, reframed things, smiled. Gaslighting is subtle when done well. But I was watching now, recording now. That evening, I heard raised voices from the kitchen. My mother's voice, tight, shaking. "I told you to stop," she said. I stood frozen at the top of the stairs. Phone recording. "You're overreacting," he replied. "You always do." A pause. Then my mother said something I never expected. "She knows." Silence. I could feel it even from upstairs. "She knows what?" he asked slowly. Another pause. "That you lie," my mother said. My breath caught. Footsteps approached the stairs. I backed away, heart racing, just as he appeared at the bottom, looking up. Our eyes met. Something shifted. For the first time, he didn't look calm. He looked threatened. "We'll talk later," he said evenly. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I packed a bag. Quietly, carefully. I hid it in my trunk when he wasn't looking. I also copied everything, audio, notes, photos, onto a cloud drive and shared access with Lena. Insurance. The next morning, my mother knocked on my door. "I should have protected you," she whispered, tears spilling freely now. I was afraid. I hugged her, holding her as she cried. "I won't let it happen again," I said. But I didn't know yet how true that promise would become. That afternoon, I received a message from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Alone." I stared at the screen. I already knew who it was. And I knew that conversation would change everything. Because when people like him realize they're losing control, they don't stay quiet. Narrated by Amelia. The message sat on my phone like a weight. "We need to talk. Alone." I didn't reply right away. I couldn't. My hands were steady, but my mind was racing, running through every possible outcome, every version of that conversation. I had learned something crucial over the last few days. When someone demands privacy, it's rarely for your benefit. I took a slow breath and did the first thing Lena had taught me. Document before you engage. I forwarded the message to her, added the timestamp, and turned on location sharing. Then I set my phone to record, slipped it into the inner pocket of my jacket, and headed downstairs. He was waiting in the living room. The curtains were half drawn, the room dimmer than usual. He sat in the armchair with his hands folded, posture relaxed, like a man preparing to give advice, not a warning. The calm felt rehearsed. "Close the door," he said gently. I didn't. "I'm fine here," I replied. A flicker of irritation crossed his face, quickly smoothed away. He gestured to the couch across from him. "Sit," he said. "We should clear things up." I sat, close to the edge, spine straight, feet planted. I kept my voice even. "About what?" He sighed, as if I were the difficult one. "You've been tense," he said. "Asking questions. Recording things." My chest tightened, but I didn't react. "That's not illegal," I said. He smiled thinly. "Depends on intent." There it was, the quiet threat dressed up as conversation. "I'm not trying to cause trouble," I said carefully. "I just want to feel safe." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Safety is a funny word," he said. "People use it when they want control." The irony nearly made me laugh. He continued, "Your mother worries about you. She thinks you're reading too much into things." I watched his mouth as he spoke, the way he tried to shape reality with words. I remembered Lena's advice, let him talk. "I think you're confused," he went on. "You left years ago. You come back upset. Of course everything feels wrong." "So you're saying it's my fault?" I said calmly. He raised his hands. "No one's saying fault." Silence stretched between us. I let it. Silence had become my ally. He finally spoke again, slower this time. "You know," he said, "there are consequences to spreading accusations." "I haven't accused anyone," I replied. "You've implied," he said. "And implication is dangerous." My phone was recording every word. I stood. "I'm going out," I said. "We can talk later, with my mother present." His jaw tightened. I said alone. "And I said later," I replied. For a moment, he didn't move. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. I kept my eyes on the door, my body angled toward it. Then he laughed. "Always stubborn," he said. "You get that from your real father." That landed harder than he expected. I turned back slowly. "Don't talk about him," I said quietly. He shrugged. He walked away. "You pushed him out," I replied. The smile vanished. "That's enough," he snapped, then caught himself, smoothing his tone. "You're emotional. Let's pause." I didn't wait for permission. I walked out, heart pounding, every sense alert. Outside, the sky was overcast. I walked until my breathing slowed, until my hands stopped shaking. I called Lena. "He knows," I told her. "Good," she said. That means he'll make mistakes. That evening, I packed the rest of my things. Quietly, efficiently. When my mother came into my room, she watched without speaking. "I'm staying with a friend," I told her. She nodded, tears filling her eyes. "I should go with you," she whispered. "You're not ready yet," I said gently. "But you will be." She hugged me tightly. "Be careful," she said. "I am," I replied. For the first time. I left before he came home. At Lena's place, we went over everything: audio files, notes, dates. She listened carefully, asking questions I hadn't thought to ask. "You need someone official," she said. "Not the police yet. Someone who understands patterns." "Like who?" "A counselor. An advocate. Someone who can help you frame this correctly." The word frame mattered. Because this wasn't just about what happened. It was about how it would be understood. The next morning, my stepfather called. I didn't answer. He texted, "We need to resolve this." I didn't reply. Then came the email. Subject line, concern. He wrote about my emotional state. About misinterpretations. About how he feared I was damaging family relationships. I forwarded it to Lena and saved it to the drive. "See," she said. "He's building a narrative." "And so are we," I replied. That afternoon, I met with a local advocate recommended by Lena. Her office was warm, quiet, nothing like the house I'd left. She listened without interrupting, taking notes, asking clarifying questions. When I finished, she looked at me steadily. "You're doing the right things," she said. "Documenting, creating distance, building support." "What happens next?" I asked. "That depends," she said. "But you're not powerless here." For the first time since I boarded that flight home, I felt something shift. Not fear, not anger. Resolve. That night, as I lay on Lena's couch, my phone buzzed again. A final message from him. "You're making a mistake." I stared at the screen, then turned the phone face down. No, I wasn't. I was finally choosing myself. I learned something important in the days that followed. Leaving the house didn't end the danger. It just changed its shape. At first, the silence felt like relief. No footsteps in the hallway. No watching my words. No measuring every breath. Lena's apartment was small, but it felt safe in a way I hadn't realized I'd been missing for years. But safety, I discovered, can be fragile. The first sign came in the form of a phone call I didn't expect. My aunt. I hadn't spoken to her in years. When her name flashed on my screen, my stomach dropped. "Amelia," she said the moment I answered. "Why didn't you tell us you were struggling like this?" I frowned. "Struggling with what?" There was a pause. "Your breakdown," she said carefully. "Your stepfather is very worried about you." My grip tightened on the phone. "He told you that?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "He says you've been recording people, making accusations. That you're unstable." The word hit me harder than any shout ever had. Unstable. I felt Lena's eyes on me from across the room. I put the call on speaker. "That's not true," I said calmly. "I left because I felt unsafe." Another pause. "Well," my aunt replied, "he didn't mention that." Of course he didn't. By the end of the day, 3 more messages came in, from relatives I barely knew, all carrying the same careful concern. The same gentle language. The same underlying accusation. Something was happening. He wasn't chasing me anymore. He was rewriting me. "He's isolating you," Lena said that night, scrolling through the messages. "It's classic." "He's turning me into the problem," I said. "Because if you're the problem," she replied, "then everything you say becomes questionable." I lay awake that night staring at the ceiling, realizing the truth. I hadn't just walked away from a house. I'd stepped into a narrative war. The next morning, I received an email from a therapist's office I'd never contacted. Subject: follow-up appointment. Inside, it referenced a concern submitted by a family member worried about my mental health. My hands shook as I forwarded it to the advocate I'd met. She called me within the hour. "This is escalation," she said. "But it also helps you." "How?" I asked. "Because he's documenting," she replied. "And documentation cuts both ways." That word again. Documentation. I began keeping a daily log, times, messages, names, exact phrasing. Every interaction went into it. Every call. Every email. I also stopped answering most messages. Silence became my shield. But he didn't stop. 2 days later, my mother called. Her voice sounded small. "He says you won't talk to him," she said. "I don't feel safe doing that," I replied. "He's telling people you're trying to punish him." I closed my eyes. "Mom," I said gently, "what do you think?" There was a long pause. "I think," she said slowly, "that I should have protected you better." Tears slid down my face. "I don't know how to fix this," she continued. "But I know you're not lying." That night, Lena and I sat at her kitchen table, papers spread out between us. "You need to take control of the story," she said. "Not by arguing, but by anchoring it to facts." "How?" "By looping in someone neutral," she replied. "Someone whose job is to notice patterns." The next step terrified me, but I agreed. The meeting took place in a small office with warm lighting and neutral walls. I told my story again, slowly, carefully, handing over recordings, notes, timelines. The counselor listened without interrupting. When I finished, she folded her hands. "You're not overreacting," she said. "And you're not alone." Something in my chest loosened. She explained how emotional manipulation often escalates when control is lost. How reputations are attacked when silence stops working. How credibility becomes the battlefield. "You did the right thing by leaving," she said. "And by documenting." As I left the building, my phone buzzed. A text from him. "You're embarrassing yourself." I didn't respond. Another message followed minutes later. "People are starting to ask questions." I stared at the screen. Good. That evening, Lena received a call. From him. He introduced himself politely. Concerned. Calm. "She's not herself," he said. "I'm afraid she's being influenced." Lena listened without reacting. Then she said something simple. "Please don't contact me again." She hung up and immediately wrote down the time and content of the call. "He slipped," she said. "He's expanding his reach." I nodded. And then my phone rang again. This time, from an unknown number. "Amelia," a male voice said. "This is HR from your former workplace." My heart raced. "We've received an inquiry regarding your behavior," he continued. "From a family member." I closed my eyes. This was it. I explained calmly, carefully, factually. I offered documentation. There was a pause on the other end. "Thank you for letting us know," he said. "We'll note that." When the call ended, I sat very still. "He's trying to burn my life down," I whispered. Lena put a hand over mine. "And he's failing," she said. That night, I added another entry to my log. And something changed. The fear didn't vanish. But it stopped running the show. Because for the first time, I understood something crucial. He needed me silent. And I wasn't anymore. There's a strange moment when fear stops being loud. It doesn't disappear, but it changes pitch. It becomes steadier, almost practical, like a voice saying, "Pay attention now. This matters." That's where I found myself. The messages slowed after he contacted my former workplace. Not because he'd stopped, but because he was adjusting. I could feel it. The calm before another tactic. His testing boundaries, the advocate told me over the phone. When one path closes, they look for another. I believed her. And I was ready. The first unexpected ally came from a place I hadn't considered. My mother. She showed up at Lena's apartment on a rainy afternoon, standing awkwardly in the hallway with a small overnight bag. Her hands trembled as she set it down. "I told him I needed space," she said quietly. Lena and I exchanged a look. "You're welcome here," Lena said immediately. My mother nodded, eyes shining with tears she hadn't let fall yet. Inside, she sat at the kitchen table, staring at her hands. He's been asking questions, she said. About what I've said. Who I've talked to. I swallowed. And I didn't answer, she said. For the first time. Something cracked open inside me. She took a deep breath and continued. I thought staying quiet kept the peace, she said. But I see now, it only protected him. She looked up at me. I'm sorry. The word landed softly, but it mattered. That night, the three of us talked for hours. Slowly, carefully. My mother told stories she'd never told me before. Small moments she'd dismissed, patterns she'd ignored. None of it was dramatic on its own. Together, it was undeniable. He's been controlling the narrative for years, Lena said. He just didn't expect you to interrupt it. The next morning, my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. Amelia. A woman asked. This is Mrs. Harding. I used to live next door to your family. My heart skipped. Yes, I replied carefully. I hope this isn't strange, she said. But I heard through the neighborhood that you're back. And that you left again. I didn't answer immediately. She continued, I always wondered if you were okay. We met that afternoon at a small cafe. She looked older than I remembered, but her eyes were sharp. I used to hear shouting, she said quietly. Not all the time, but enough. I felt my throat tighten. I wanted to call someone, she admitted. But your mother always said everything was fine. She reached into her bag and pulled out a notebook. I started writing things down, she said. Dates. Times. Just in case. My hands shook as I accepted it. Witness. The advocate's voice echoed in my mind. Truth needs witnesses. Over the next week, more people surfaced. A former co-worker of his who remembered uncomfortable conversations. A distant relative who'd stopped visiting because something felt off. A neighbor who recalled the police being called once, years ago. None of it was explosive. All of it was consistent. And consistency is powerful. Meanwhile, he grew quieter. No more texts. No emails. No sudden concern. That silence told me everything. He's lawyering up, Lena said one evening. How do you know? I asked. He stopped trying to scare you, she replied. That means he's switched to defense. The advocate helped me organize everything into a clean timeline. No emotions. No assumptions. Just facts. This isn't revenge, she reminded me. It's protection. One afternoon, my mother received a voicemail. His voice, controlled, tight. You're making a mistake, he said. This will destroy our family. She deleted it without replying. That night, she said something that stunned me. I don't want to go back, she said. I looked at her. Are you sure? She nodded. I'm tired of shrinking. I realized then that this wasn't just my fight anymore. It was generational. The next call came from the advocate. There's interest, she said. From people who've seen this pattern before. What does that mean? I asked. It means you're being taken seriously. I exhaled shakily. A few days later, I was asked to provide a formal statement. I sat in a quiet room, hands folded, speaking slowly. Every word felt heavy, but necessary. When I finished, the woman across from me nodded. Thank you, she said. This helps more than you know. As I left the building, I checked my phone. One new message. From him. I never meant to hurt anyone. I stared at the screen. Not I'm sorry. Not I was wrong. Just distance. Deflection. I didn't respond. That night, I stood by the window at Lena's place, watching the city lights flicker. For the first time, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. I wasn't waiting. The truth was moving now, without me pushing it. And I understood something clearly. Control survives in isolation. Truth survives in community. I had one. And he knew it. Power doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it arrives quietly, without noise, without spectacle. slipping into the space where fear used to live and settling there like it belongs. That's how it felt when I woke up one morning and realized I wasn't afraid of my phone anymore. For weeks, every vibration had made my chest tighten. Every unknown number felt like a threat. But that morning, when I reached for my phone and saw missed calls, my reaction surprised me. I felt calm, not confident, not victorious, just steady. The advocate had warned me this part would feel strange. When control shifts, she said, people often don't recognize it right away. They keep bracing for impact that never comes. That was me, still braced, even as the ground beneath me grew firmer. The first real consequence came in the form of a letter. Not to me, but to him. I didn't see it, of course. But my mother did. She received a message that afternoon, her hands shaking as she read it aloud. They're requesting a statement, she said. From him. I closed my eyes slowly. For years, he had demanded explanations, justifications, apologies. Now someone else was asking questions. And he didn't control the room. That night, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a threat. It was restraint. I think we should stop communicating for now, he wrote. Lawyers prefer clarity. I stared at the message, then handed the phone to Lena. She smiled softly. That, she said, is retreat. The silence that followed felt different from the others. Not heavy, not strategic, defensive. Days passed, then weeks. The world didn't collapse. No one dragged me back. No public explosion arrived to punish my honesty. Instead, small things began to change. My aunt called again, but this time, her voice sounded uncertain. He hasn't been answering, she said. Anne, I wanted to hear your side. I told her calmly, briefly, without anger. She listened. I didn't know, she said quietly. I should have asked sooner. After we hung up, I sat very still. This was how narratives cracked, not with shouting, but with doubt. My former workplace emailed again, not with concern, but apology. Thank you for clarifying. We've noted the context. Context. That word felt like oxygen. One afternoon, Lena and I walked through the park where I'd once felt hunted. The trees were beginning to change color, leaves drifting lazily to the ground. You're lighter, she said. I feel like I'm finally in my own body, I replied. At home, my home now, not his, I began rebuilding routines. Morning walks, writing, therapy sessions that focused less on survival and more on identity. Who was I without constant vigilance? The question felt terrifying and freeing. My mother, too, was changing. She laughed more easily, took longer pauses before answering questions. Once, when a number she recognized lit up her phone, she let it ring. I don't owe him access, she said quietly. I squeezed her hand. One evening, the advocate called. There's been a development, she said. My stomach tightened, but I stayed calm. He's withdrawn from voluntary mediation, she continued. Which tells us something. What? I asked. That he understands he can't control the outcome, she replied. I hung up and sat by the window, watching the city lights again. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for something bad to happen. I was waiting for myself. The final shift came unexpectedly. A message from a woman I didn't know. You don't know me, it read. But I heard what you did. It helped me leave too. I read it 3 times. Tears blurred the screen. I hadn't set out to be brave. I just refused to disappear. That night, I dreamed, not of the house, not of locked doors or raised voices, but of open spaces. Long roads. Sunlight. When I woke, I knew something fundamental had changed. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was choosing. And somewhere, I imagined, he felt it. The loss of the thing he'd relied on most. My silence. I used to think closure was something loud. An apology. A confession. A moment where everything finally made sense and the past snapped into place like a solved puzzle. I was wrong. Closure doesn't arrive with answers. It arrives with acceptance. I realized that on a quiet Tuesday morning while standing in line at a grocery store. Nothing dramatic happened. No memories crashed into me. No phone buzzed with news. I just noticed something strange. I felt present, not guarded, not scanning the room, not rehearsing what I'd say if I saw him. Just there. That was new. The advocate had warned me that healing often feels anticlimactic. You'll expect something big, she said. But usually it's subtle. A day where the past doesn't interrupt the present. That day was mine. Still, the past hadn't disappeared. It had simply stopped demanding my attention every second. Later that week, I received a message from my mother's phone. She'd handed it to me without speaking. It was from him. I'd like to apologize. Properly. One last conversation. My body reacted before my mind did. Muscles tensing, breath shortening. But beneath that old reflex was something steadier. Choice. I don't have to, I said slowly. My mother nodded. No, she said. You don't. We sat in silence for a moment. What do you want to do? She asked. I thought about it carefully. Not from fear. Not from guilt. From clarity. I don't want a conversation, I said. I want distance. She smiled sadly. I think that's wise. She sent a single reply. We won't be meeting. Please respect that. No justification. No explanation. Boundaries don't argue. The message that came back was long. Defensive. Emotional. Full of words like misunderstanding, intentions, family. We didn't read it all. We didn't need to. That night, I talked about it in therapy. You're grieving something, my therapist said. What? I asked. The version of him you needed but never had, she replied. And the version of yourself that kept hoping. That hit harder than anything else had. I hadn't just been afraid all those years. I'd been waiting. For him to change. For my mother to protect me. For the house to feel like home. Letting go of that hope felt like loss. But also, freedom. In the weeks that followed, small memories surfaced unexpectedly. Not the explosive ones, but quieter moments I'd never processed. The way I used to memorize the sound of his car in the driveway. The way my shoulders always tensed at raised voices, even laughter. The way I apologized too quickly in every relationship. I began noticing these patterns not with shame, but with curiosity. Oh, I'd think. That's where that came from. Understanding softened things. One afternoon, Lena and I sat on her balcony, watching the city below. You're different, she said. In a good way. I feel unfinished, I replied. But not broken. She smiled. That's healing, she said. My mother started her own counseling. Watching her learn to speak without fear was both painful and beautiful. Once, she said something that surprised me. I don't hate him, she said. But I don't need to forgive him either. I nodded. Me neither. Forgiveness, I learned, isn't a requirement. Safety is. Peace is. Autonomy is. One evening, I received another message. From the neighbor, Mrs. Harding. They've sold the house, she wrote. I stared at the words for a long time. The house. The walls that held so many echoes. Are you okay? Lena asked. Yes, I said slowly. I think I am. I imagined the empty rooms. The silence settling in places that once felt suffocating. I didn't feel triumph. I felt distance. And distance, I realized, can be a gift. That night, I dreamed again, but this time, I was packing boxes. Closing doors. Walking away without looking back. When I woke, my chest felt light. I understood something clearly then. Closure isn't about them understanding what they did. It's about you understanding what you deserve. And I finally did. Home used to be a place I braced for. A set of walls where my body learned to listen for danger before my mind caught up. A place where comfort was conditional and silence was survival. After everything, I didn't know what home meant anymore. So I decided to build one, slowly, intentionally, without fear baked into the foundation. It started with a move. Not dramatic. No fresh start montage. Just a small apartment with sunlight in the mornings and a creaky floorboard by the kitchen. The lease was in my name. The locks were new. The windows opened easily. I stood in the empty living room the first night, listening. Nothing. No footsteps I needed to identify. No voices I needed to interpret. Just quiet. I slept on a mattress on the floor, wrapped in a borrowed blanket, and for the first time in years, my dreams didn't jolt me awake. The next morning, I made coffee and drank it standing up, watching dust float through the light. It felt ordinary and miraculous. Lena came by with boxes later that day. "You look like someone who owns their own oxygen," she said, handing me a plant. I laughed. "Is that a thing?" "It is now," she replied. We unpacked slowly. She insisted on organizing the kitchen. I let her. Control shared willingly feels different. It doesn't scrape. As the days passed, I noticed the smallest changes in myself. I stopped apologizing for existing. I took longer pauses before answering questions. I didn't rush to explain my choices. In therapy, we talked about that shift. "You're unlearning hypervigilance," my therapist said. "It takes time. Your nervous system is recalibrating." Some days were easier than others. A slammed door in the hallway once sent my heart racing. A man raising his voice on the street made my shoulders tense. But instead of spiraling, I noticed the reaction and breathed through it. "I'm safe," I'd remind myself. Right now. My mother visited one Sunday afternoon, carrying a bag of groceries like a peace offering. She moved through my space carefully, respectfully, asking before sitting, before opening cabinets. "You don't have to be so cautious," I told her gently. She smiled sadly. "I know. I'm learning." We cooked together, talked about small things, recipes, weather, a show she'd started watching. It was the kind of conversation we'd never had before. At one point, she looked around the apartment. "This feels like you," she said. It was the best compliment I'd ever received. I began building routines that had nothing to do with survival. Morning walks, a writing class on Thursdays, dinner with friends who didn't know my past unless I chose to share it. I learned how powerful choice could be. One evening, after class, a woman approached me. "You said something earlier," she said, "about listening to your body when it tells you no." I nodded. "That helped me," she continued. "Thank you." I walked home with a strange warmth in my chest. I wasn't just healing. I was connecting. The past still surfaced sometimes, usually when I least expected it. A smell, a phrase, a certain tone of voice. But it no longer owned me. I owned it. One night, I found myself standing outside the old neighborhood. I hadn't planned to go there. My feet had carried me without asking permission. The house was dark. A for sale sign stood crooked on the lawn. I didn't go closer. I didn't need to. I stood across the street and felt nothing sharp, just distance, like looking at a photograph of someone else's life. I whispered something I hadn't realized I'd been holding back. "I survived you." Then I turned and walked away. Back at my apartment, Lena was waiting with takeout. "Good timing," she said. I was hungry. We ate on the floor, laughing at nothing in particular. Later, as I lay in bed, I realized something quietly profound. My life wasn't centered on what happened to me anymore. It was centered on what I was building. And that changed everything. The end of a story rarely looks the way we imagine it will. There was no courtroom revelation, no dramatic apology, no moment where everyone suddenly understood what I had endured and gathered around me in remorse. Instead, the ending arrived quietly, on an ordinary morning, in an ordinary moment, when I realized something profound. My life no longer revolved around what he had done. That was the victory. I woke up early that day, sunlight spilling across my bedroom floor. The city outside hummed softly, cars, footsteps, distant voices. Normal sounds. Safe sounds. I made coffee and sat by the window, watching the world move forward without asking my permission. And for the first time, I felt ready to move with it. I had spent so long defining myself in opposition to him, survivor, escapee, witness, that I hadn't fully considered who I was beyond that. So I asked myself a simple question. What do I want now? Not what would prove something. Not what would justify my pain. Just what felt right. The answer surprised me with its simplicity. I wanted peace. I wanted purpose. I wanted a life that didn't flinch. That afternoon, I met my therapist for what would be our final session together. Not because I was fixed, but because I had reached a place of steadiness. "You're not closing a door," she said gently. "You're opening one." I nodded. "I'm done surviving," I replied. "I want to live." We talked about the future, not the past. About work, creativity, relationships, rest. About trust, not blind trust, but earned trust. About choosing people who didn't require me to shrink. As I left her office, I felt something lift. Not relief. Permission. That evening, my mother came over for dinner. She looked different these days. Lighter, more present. Healing had softened her posture, given her eyes a steadiness I'd never seen before. "I found a small apartment," she said, almost shyly, "near the park." I smiled. "I'm proud of you," I said. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I learned from you," she replied. "We didn't talk about him. We didn't need to. Some stories don't deserve continued airtime." Later that night, I went through an old folder on my laptop, the one labeled documentation. Files, recordings, notes, proof of everything I'd endured. I stared at it for a long time. Then I archived it. Not deleted, not erased, just stored away. The past didn't need to be destroyed to lose its power. It only needed to stop running the present. A week later, I received one final message, forwarded through a lawyer. A settlement offer. A request for silence. I read it once. Then I declined. Not out of anger. Not out of spite. But because my silence was no longer something anyone else could buy. I wrote back through my own counsel. No further contact. Please respect this boundary. And that was it. No fireworks. No collapse. Just an ending. On a warm evening not long after, I hosted a small gathering in my apartment. Friends, laughter, music low in the background. People who knew me as I was, not as a story, not as a cautionary tale. At one point, I stepped onto the balcony alone and looked out over the city lights. I thought about the girl who boarded that flight home months ago. Terrified, hopeful, unprepared for what awaited her. I wished I could tell her this. You don't need to be believed by everyone. You don't need closure from people who caused the harm. You don't need to prove how much it hurt. You only need to choose yourself, again and again, until it sticks. I went back inside, into the noise and warmth and life. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was returning anywhere. I was arriving. At myself.